Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, all you winners and grinners. It's time to take your place on the podium, don that laurel wreath and accept the bouquet. Welcome to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Now, in today's episode, we're going all highbrow and joining the fight against art fraud with a way of protecting investors from billions of dollars of criminal industry. We'll take a peek into the nightclub scene of the 21st century, and we'll take a look at modern guide dogs. But before all of that, let's welcome the man with the big ideas. How are you today, Matthew Dickerson?
I am very well, thank you very much, James Eddy. And big ideas, I've actually stolen some big ideas from some people this week because I haven't used them for a little while, but I've had need to use some of the freelance marketplaces during the week. And I do enjoy them. So companies like Upwork or Fiverr or 99 Design, some of those. And I used to use them a little bit for different jobs, but I haven't had a need to use them lately. But I've had a little project I've been working on this week and I needed to get some extra people to help me on that. And gee, I just am so impressed by the amount of talent that's on these various sites and just the ease of use of those. And I had some obscure jobs I've used them for in the past. So there was one time I had an old database. I used to manage our school database when I was at school, and I managed it over the years. And in the end, it ended up in Paradox. Now, we had a school reunion, so I wanted to pull up some of those names and just make sure we had all people's names there. Do you think I could manage to get into a Paradox database? I needed Paradox, the program, and the last time I'd used that was an old DOS-based program. So, what am I going to do here? And I went, well, I've got the file. I just can't read it. Surely someone on some of these marketplaces. So I went and posted the job, and I had 20 or 30 people come and say, yeah, we've got Paradox skills. We can do that. So I gave the job to someone. I paid, $100, $150.
So, sorry, I'm a layman here. So Paradox is an outdated...
very outdated database.
Database.
So it was a DOS-based database program that was used, well, I think probably 20 years ago that I last used it.
But these companies still have people who speak Paradox.
They still have individuals out there. Some of them probably had Paradox loaded up on an old PC. So I sent my Paradox files.
A guy who lives out in the sticks in a shack somewhere.
We'll
go and get old Ben Kenobi.
That's right. You mean Paradox isn't a current database? So I sent the database to them. They basically got into it to look at it, pulled the data out and put it in a file format that I could recognise and sent it back to them. Wow, that saved me a lot of work because the only way I could see to do it was to somehow find a copy of Paradox. I don't know where I was going to find that, but search around somewhere, I probably would have finally found a copy somewhere and then load that up, hope it still worked, and then basically pull my database out of that. But so
doing your own version of archaeology.
Basically, it would have been like that.
Yeah.
I had another obscure one where I needed some newspaper clippings, and I had electronic copies of these various newspapers, and I need certain clippings, and it involved me going into each individual newspaper and then looking through the paper to find this particular information that I was after, and then pulling out a screenshot effectively of it, an electronic copy of it.
Right.
And that was spread out over, say, a year or so. I went, this is tedious work. What am I doing? I reckon someone could do this. And so posted the job, someone out there, they charged me $20 an hour or something, and away they went and trawled through these newspapers, pulled it out, gave me the files, went, wow, that just saved me so much time. That was fantastic. Wow. Yeah. So they're actually, they're very clever in the way the site's set up and the way the sites work. But what I'm more amazed about is just the variety of skills that are out there across the world and a variety of prices. So there are some people who I almost feel guilty, so I probably don't go to this level, where they might be charging you $5 or $6 an hour to do jobs. And I think, I feel like that's almost slave labour.
So these guys are like a technical version or technological version of the goodies.
Do anything,
anytime? Yeah.
Anywhere.
That's right.
You could do a modern goodies on it, I'm sure.
Yeah, right.
But they're all over the world, and this is the wonderful thing we've got now with our global marketplace. They're all over the world, and they've got skills and so many different things. So you post a job and say, I need blah, blah, blah. And so, for example, I said that one. I've used them before. I was trying to find some new mountain bike tyres. My mountain bike tyre preference, they'd stopped making that mountain bike tyre, and I had certain specifications I needed. And this is before ChatGPT came along, because now I just asked ChatGPT. but before, and I went, I need to find this and this, and I'm going to be searching all these. I know, I'll just post it on one of these sites. And I paid someone, I think, $30 to go and do some research for me to find the particular tyre that I was after to replace the tyre that was no longer being manufactured. So anything you can think of that can be done remotely,
Yeah.
you can post on one of these sites, and then your conscience and how much you want to pay, you got to marry those up a little bit,
Yeah, right.
and pay something you think seems fair and reasonable, and also something where you're going to get it at a reasonable price for you. So, and people that do charge.
And what's to stop them from just using a bit of ChatGPT themselves a little bit more cleverly than you did?
Possibly, and if that's what happened, if that's what they do,
Then
if you
good
get the
luck to them.
solution, that's
Yep.
right. If you get the solution the way
You're
you
looking
want
for
it,
a solution. You're paying
Yeah.
for a solution.
and I think now, and maybe I haven't used them so much lately because I've used
Yeah.
ChatGPT more than I have in the past when it didn't exist, obviously. So maybe that's the reason I haven't used it. But there are some things that are still a bit obscure, some things you still want some work with, some help with. Even going to ChatGPT or various generative sites that will actually produce a logo, they're not great. But some of these ones, I think 99 Designs is one of those ones that focuses on logos. You'll get someone who is a graphic artist or has tendencies to like graphic art type design or is very skilled in it. Who knows, a variety of skills out there, and they'll do a logo that's more to what you want. And one of the frustrations I have with ChatGPT is you'll say, okay, you drew that for me. Now, can you just fix this part up here or spell that correctly there? And you get another picture back, which is the same, or they didn't fix the bit you wanted. So it's sometimes, whereas at least talking to a human, you go, at least you'll give me the answer you want. I had a very frustrating conversation with Chat yesterday, off topic here slightly.
You didn't lose your temper, and and like start writing things in a very aggressive way to it.
Well, I was actually having a verbal chat. I will remember that I was angry, but I was having a verbal chat to it, so I didn't yell at it. I just was driving along, and I just was interested to know what time, as you know, our listeners know I'm a MotoGP fan, and I want to know what time the MotoGP was on in our time, Australian time, because it's over in Japan. And off the top of my head, Japan's about an hour behind. So I wasn't quite sure what time P1 and P2 were on the Friday. So on the car, I just hit the button to talk to Chat as I'm driving, and I said, can you tell me what time in Sydney time that the MotoGP P1 and P2 are on in Japan this weekend? And it came back and said, yep, sure. The times, it didn't tell me the times in Japan, but it says the time's converted to Sydney time at 2:45 a.m. for P1. And I've gone, 2:45 a.m.? I thought Japan was only an hour behind. Maybe I got that wrong. And so then I said, what's the time difference between Sydney and Japan, say Tokyo and Japan? And so it came back and said 1 hour. I went, okay.
Right.
So 2:45 a.m. And I actually said, I kind of paused. I said, I don't think 1:45 a.m. is the time
Something they're starting
that they're doing practice one in MotoGP. No, of course not. It's at normal morning time in Japan, but it's 2:45 a.m. in Sydney time. I've gone, no. So it took me three goes, and then it's kind of saying, oh, I see what you're saying. I see, but it's the time difference that makes a difference. Yes, it is, but an hour. Finally.
Pay attention.
After three goes, it said, oh, it's on at 10:45 a.m. in Japan and 11:45 a.m. in Sydney. Well, how did you get 2:45 a.m.? I apologise for that. Well, it's not good enough, Chat.
Yeah, I think that's a lesson. We've got to be discerning about what we draw out of ChatGPT.
I think something that you might have said to me one time is that when kids use calculators in a maths class, they punch in a number and they just write down the number blindly sometimes. They need to look at that number and go, does that make sense? Is it really that many busloads of people? Is it really that number? I'm not sure. So I think with any sort of generative AI, you get the answer, but you go,
You've still got to ask the question.
That's right. Does it sound right?
You've still got to be discerning. Yeah. Oh, dear. Well, that's the future for us, yeah? Let's tuck into our first story for today. Now, if you've ever been to Disneyland before, or maybe if you've never been to Disneyland before, you've got to believe all the rumours. It's all true. Disney is a magical place, and it's always tried to build up that magic sort of atmosphere, embracing all the latest tech to ensure that everybody goes home absolutely buzzing. The latest from Disney Imagineers is their custom smart glasses, and that's going to add a little less extra fairy dust to the experience, Matt.
Yeah, I do love this idea because, of course, you can get people to help you go around Disney and get the best experience, and you can read reviews. And a couple of things I learnt in one of the trips we went to Disneyland, one was it's probably worth paying for the fast lanes because you don't really want to spend all day at Disneyland in a line. What did you do today? Well, I spent 2 hours in that line and 3 hours in that line, and I went on 2 rides because I was there
the first
the whole
time
day.
we went, we were 2.5 hours in the first line.
There you go.
But we didn't realise because there's all this theatre going on around you as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we realised, we've been here for 2.5 hours, we still haven't done anything yet.
That's right. And then the other trick that I learned on one of the trips was if you're happy to be a loner, then you can jump the queue. So we were there one time with our kids and we said, well, I think it was a Cars ride, Cars the cartoon, and they had a Cars ride. I went, well, kids, as long as you don't mind being on a car with some randos, let's jump over there to a different line. And so we end up on different cars. We'd see each other as we go past, but we got to jump the queue because you got to stand in the individual. So they'd fill up a car with a group and go, oh, we need one more. Oh, there's the random line over there. Yeah, you jump in there. And oh, that was better than
So
waiting
anyone
for
have to
hours.
sit with a big smelly guy and they just looked like they were having a terrible time that whole ride?
Basically,
Let's
but
roll the dice.
they still got to go on the ride. So and that's where a virtual assistant could help because the whole concept here is they basically give you, not for free, they charge you for it, a pair of Meta's new Ray-Ban smart glasses. So we've talked about smart glasses before. They're a good pair of smart glasses, but then they're tuned specifically to the Disneyland adventure. So you go along and you say, oh, what's that ride over there? It knows what you're looking at because the glasses can see that ride over there, and it will tell you what that ride over there is. And then it might say to you, for example, well, you can go to that. At the moment, the lines on that line or that ride are 3 hours long, or you can go the fast lane, or you can go the individual one. But if you want to go to a ride similar, then this one over here has only got a half-hour wait for that particular line because it's tapped into the queues around the location. It's tapped into everything that's happening there. And then I like the idea that you can also talk about food. So, for example, I'm gluten-free. Where I am right now, can you tell me where the nearest gluten-free snacks are? And I'll tell you where to go for that. Or you see someone eating something. Oh, I like what that guy's eating. Where would I get one of those? Well, that came from the blah, blah, blah cafeteria. Then you can go over there. It's only a 2-minute walk from where you are now. So just getting that person, it's like having that assistant with you the whole time.
Yeah, the person with the inside knowledge.
Inside knowledge.
And when they
absolutely.
say to you, hey, the lines are really small on the Small World ride, you can race over there and then...
Everyone.
Well, you arrive at the Small World and you think, oh, I know why the lines were so small for this ride.
I was imagining everyone wearing these glasses running to the same ride, but then they
Hey,
get
the
there.
queue's really small in the Small World, but you might want to think about it anyway.
There's a reason for that. So I think this is a big competitive area for theme parks in general. I think that you'll see more augmented reality. I think theme parks in the future will be saying, come to us because we've got these great rides and we've got this extra technology built in. Now, you still want people physically going there. You don't want them just losing themselves in virtual reality, sitting at home, putting on a headset and going, well, I've been on all the rides at Disneyland. I did it in 3 hours rather than take 3 days to do it because it's not quite the same as being there and being amongst it all. And as you say, just the theatre of being there, things that you see as a consequence of being there, not because you went there to see that. So sometimes that's part of the adventure of being at a live event, live sport or whatever it might be. So
I reckon, look, even like as I said, standing in a line in a queue for 2.5 hours, it's not just a long line. You're actually weaving in and out of stuff, and you go through doors and you think, oh, we're nearly there, and you realise, oh, we're not quite there, but the door's just over there. We're not far from it, and then there's another door you've got to go through. But all the while, there's all this other theatre going around you, so you're entertained. They manage queues really, really well.
they do. And there's just the people around you.
Yeah.
You're all there trying to achieve
For
the
the
same outcome,
reasons, yeah.
and you have a chat to people there and they're friendly. Although it can get embarrassing. I'm not sure if I've told you this story before, but there was one time I was lined up at an airport and it was a typical snaking queue that wound back on itself. So it went back and forth. And I saw Ricky Ponting and the one behind me, former Australian Test cricket captain, legend sports person in Australia. I've never met Ricky, so I shook his hand and said, okay, Ricky, I just want to shake your hand, say good day, thanks very much. Had a 10-second conversation and that was it. But then as we snaked around back the other way, it's like,
hi, Ricky,
oh,
here you go.
G'day. And we snaked around again. Oh, this is a bit awkward now, isn't it? We snaked around again. So how many times can you do that where you then put your head down your phone and pretend you don't know who that Ricky Ponting guy is over there? So I think we'll see more of this. Universal recently opened Epic Universe, so they've got some immersive tech experiences in there, but this is the first major theme park that has given you a virtual assistant around the entire theme park. We've talked about it before with things like museums, which makes a lot of sense, but we've had museums kind of something like this before. We've had the little device that looked a bit like a mini Walkman that you'd clip on your
that's
belt
right,
and you'd have a headset
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got some of that and it'll tell you about the painting you're looking at, but this with glasses on so that it is aware of exactly where you are and exactly what you're looking at, I think that's really cool. So I'm keen to go back again now and see how much better the experience is.
Now, the humble computer mouse was instrumental in home computing's explosion into the marketplace. Without it, computing would have been delayed by decades at least, and would have remained the tool of coders almost exclusively. Now, in over 50 years, the computer mouse has barely changed its design until now, Matt.
Until now, they're looking at it, and there's been a few attempts at design changes, and I don't know that we've ever nailed it. So sometimes the original is the best, but I remember, and I haven't done it for probably more than a decade now, but I used to do some computer training courses, and sometimes I'd have people that weren't that experienced with computers. So sometimes there'd be more advanced training courses, but sometimes some basic training. And so sometimes I'd just go through some of the basics, and I'd say, move the mouse up the screen. And some people in the training course would lift their hand up. And when you think about it, using your brain to move something in a horizontal plane on a desk to create a cursor that goes in the vertical plane, because I used to laugh silently to myself because I don't want to laugh at one of my students. I would go, oh, really? You just lifted your mouse? But hold on, I did say move the mouse up, so I guess that makes sense. But also, it's actually quite complicated. And when you see people who hadn't used a mouse before trying to move up the desk to go up the screen, it was really complicated.
Well, if that happened today, where people lifted it up off the table, you would just you'd stare at them in wonder because we've all become so accustomed over the last.
You would hope so.
Yeah,
that's right. But I think it is a bit like the rub your belly and pat your head.
It
type
is.
Thing
I was going to say
when you're going in those different planes. Now we've become used to it. We've become habituated to it, more or less.
That's right.
Where we just understand that's how it works. So if you had a device that you did lift it up, which might make more sense, then that would be very weird to use in the first place.
It's now just an extension of the arm.
It is a bit. But that's a bit of a problem because we see a number of RSI incidents, and we see people who have got sore wrists, sore hands from using a mouse, in particular people that are doing CAD work, people that are using their mouse a lot, then they sometimes get some of those. So,
well, I could tell you what a bad mouse is, but I couldn't tell you what a good mouse is. So the bad mouse is the one that you've been using like all day, and you've just got this aching wrist, or the side of your hand aches, or you've got so many buttons you don't know what to do with them.
That's right.
I just want the right and left click, really. Maybe a mouse.
I've only got 5 fingers or 4 fingers and a thumb. I don't need 28 buttons
all these
on
other
there.
buttons that, what do they even do?
And then you bump them sometimes. That
Yeah, I
becomes a bit of a
know.
problem.
Yeah.
So I actually, for a while, I started using my left hand for my mouse, not because I was trying to be ambidextrous, but I had a brother, or I still have a brother who's left-handed, and when I'd use his computer, he always had his mouse set up on the left and there was no room on the right. And that was back
Is
in
there
the
such
days.
a thing as a left-handed mouse, or?
You normally switch the...
Oh, you can switch the buttons.
You switch the buttons over, but I know there are companies out there that talk about their left-handed mouse. It might be like a left-handed screwdriver. It mightn't be much different, but it sits the...
Because I've tried to use a mouse left-handed and it doesn't work.
Right. Well, it might be just your brain as well.
Yes, it is.
But
my brain doesn't work.
But the shape of the mouse is obviously suited to the right hand. And there are left-handed mice. Sometimes they're universal.
Yeah, but I just can't manipulate the buttons. I'm always right-clicking where I want to left-click.
Well, it took a bit of learning when I used my brother's computer because it was left-handed, but eventually got to the stage where I could use it left-handed and it was okay. But that was probably better to share the load. But some researchers are working on different concepts, and maybe that originally is the best, but they've got a few different ones. So they've got one that they call Flexi Mouse, and what it is basically like a squeezy toy. So you've got a lump that sits very nicely in your hand and suits the shape of your hand because your hand gathers around it, right hand, left hand, whatever. But as you squeeze different parts of that moves your cursor on the screen. So they actually gave it to some students, said, try this out. Now, they found it more comfortable, they found it easier to use, but they couldn't use it as quickly. But again, that was on their first try.
Yeah.
Part of the issue there as well is clicking a mouse button when you've got no clicker on the actual mouse because it's a big squeezy toy. So that becomes a bit of a problem. So they've got to work out ways
And
to
so
do
you don't
that.
have to slide this thing around the desk.
It sits in one spot. So that's, again, rather than having small wrist movements, and people who can't see what we're doing at the moment, I'm moving my wrist from side to side to simulate those small wrist movements, but that's where you would get some of that RSI. So just squeezing it in different spots. I want to go left, I just squeeze with my thumb. I want to go right, I squeeze with my little finger, and that moves the mouse around. So again, efficiency-wise, in their first test, terrible. Comfort-wise, fantastic. So it means you're a bit slower at your work, but more comfortable. The other one that I found fascinating was an A-frame mouse. And if you could picture, for example, a short, maybe 8 centimetre piece of plastic that goes up, and then it's got a joint, another 8 centimetre piece down. So it's an A-frame, nothing joining the middle of it there.
Right.
And then you hold onto it such that the first part of the A-frame slides out and back, so forward and backwards, left and right, and you kind of grip hold of the back part of it. Again, the idea here is to keep your wrist still and use your fingers to move it around. So that was another one they experimented with. Again, they found people didn't have wrist soreness, but they were a bit clumsy in the way they used it. But again,
finger soreness.
Finger soreness, maybe. Maybe that's the next thing they'll get from it. But we have tried things. You remember, it'd have to be at least 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, that Microsoft came out with a big pad that just had a big ball in the middle of it, and you'd actually spin the ball from side to side. And that made sense because you can spin the ball in any direction, so fantastic.
Yeah.
But that didn't seem to go that well, didn't seem to take off. Of course, computers, they used to have, I think it might be a brand name, but AcuPoint used to be a little style. I think Toshiba used to have an AcuPoint sitting in the middle of the keyboard, and you just moved that ever so slightly. But gee, that was, you're talking about not millimeters, but it was micrometers that you were moving that forward and back to move that around.
And that had a rubber top that often came off as well after a while. And,
you know the one. Trying to buy a new rubber top. No, good luck with that.
I'll just get my mouse, a wireless mouse or something.
And I use a notebook with a trackpad, but I still always find if I'm anywhere that I can just pull out a mouse and use it.
Same.
If I'm sitting in a plane on my sort of desk in front of me or the fold out in front of me, if I can just fit a mouse beside it, I will. Otherwise, I use the trackpad and I go,
the trackpad is the last resort.
That's right.
It's when everything else is broken or unavailable to you.
So I do wonder whether there will be the very bad pun about a better mousetrap. I wonder whether there will be a better mouse, that someone will build a better mouse at some stage, because we probably need it, but maybe, again, that first design was basically all we needed.
With brain-computer interface, we just look at the screen and wink.
Right. Think about it. That's it.
Now, the world of high-level crime is probably quite unfamiliar to most of our listeners. I'm guessing, of course, there might be some of you out there heavily involved in this sort of stuff. But it may surprise you to know that art forgery is a multi-billion-dollar crime annually. Now, access to skilled art historians, pardon me, when making big art purchases is harder than you'd think. And I reckon it'd be really hard. But perhaps a little help from AI may turn the odds around a bit at least. Matt, it may be time to get that Renoir in your lounge room assessed, because I've always been a little bit suspicious of it.
Oh, have you? I thought it was genuine.
Well, the fact that it's signed down the bottom Bob Renoir is...
Bobby. They said he used to sign his paintings like that.
Well, I've looked it up, and anyway.
Not convinced.
Get it checked out.
So it's one of those things that we sometimes joke about, or maybe it's just my bad jokes, but we often say that in scams, they estimate how much money we lose in scams, and they talk about the unreported figure of scams, and then we always joke, well, how do you know? Because they're not reported. And it's a bit the same with art. They talk about the art forgery industry being a $4 to $6 billion industry. So people out there buying, like my Renoirs, people out there spending all that money.
$12.5 million on a Renoir and then realised that it's got signed Bob Renoir down the bottom.
That's right. So I'm sure there's no department of global counterfeit canvases out there, but the authorities, I'll trust them on this one, $4 to $6 billion in art forgeries. And there's a few reasons for that, I think. One of them, of course, is if you go to an auction house, a major auction house, a Christie's, a Sotheby's, you'd probably be reasonably confident that that painting you're bidding for was going to be genuine. But sometimes people say, I've got a Mona Lisa. The one hanging in the Louvre is actually a fake. I've got the real one, and I'm only asking this much for it. Get it checked out if you like. Well, who do you take it to get that checked out?
I'm hearing the soundtrack to, what was it, the Thomas Crown Affair, floating around about. Did you ever see that movie?
No.
It's about this stuff exactly.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
So I started to think $4 to $6 billion was a bit over the top. But then if you consider that a Leonardo da Vinci painting went for $450 million in 2017.
Wow.
A Andy Warhol went for $195 million. A Picasso went for $180 million. So when you start to talk about
we think they were Picassos and Andy Warhols.
That's right.
They might have been.
So on that basis, I only need to get myself 13 dodgy Da Vincis and I can get that $6 billion figure there. So what are we doing about it? Well, I'm not that concerned about it, to be honest. I've cheated, and apart from my Renoir that you mentioned, I've got a TV, a smart TV, that's got art mode. And I won't mention the brand name. There's a few different companies out there that do it. And so I pay a small subscription fee. I can't remember how much it is. It might be $50 a year. And I get some of the masterpieces on my smart TV. Now, you may poo-poo that, James. You may say it doesn't smell like a real painting. It doesn't have the texture of a real painting. And I agree, but I get to see Picassos and Renoirs and a whole range of different masterpieces on my smart TV.
Yeah, right.
And I can enjoy them on a regular basis. And I know they're fakes. That's okay. I know they're prints of the real thing. But I also haven't invested $200 million in it.
Yeah, that's right.
and I'm pretty confident that I get to experience them still just as much as the real one. Is there any lack of experience in that?
Yeah, I reckon if you're an art collector, I reckon that you're pretty interested in having the real thing.
You reckon I've just insulted every art collector out there?
They've gone, you do what? With the what?
So what are we doing about it? Well, a couple of things. There's been an AI robotic painter built. There's a startup that's created this AI robotic painter. And what it will do, with permission, I stress here, with permission of the original, whoever owns the copyright in that particular artwork now, presumably the person, most of these big artworks, the person has died many years ago, whoever owns the copyright on that gives them permission to have AI copy that artwork and produce a painting that's an authorised copy. And it's a painting. It's not a print, it's a painting.
Yeah, right.
So it'll be the same sort of brushstrokes, the same sort of texture, the same sort of paints as the original. And then they sell them not for hundreds of millions, they sell them for thousands, maybe $10,000. So suddenly you can own a painting that's one of the masterpieces. It'll be stamped on the bottom, authorised copy of whatever the real painting is. So you're not trying to say to your friend, look, I've got a $200 million painting on my wall. It's an authorised copy of it. But what they're doing with that then is A, giving masterpiece artwork to the masses, but B, they're then giving that to AI detectives. So they're allowing AI to analyse that to see just how they might be different to the real thing and then learn from that and then go and look at other paintings and go, aha, I know that's not real because I've studied the real one, I've studied some fake ones, and I've picked up what's gone wrong. And it might just be a little thing where certain painters, for example, will never lift up their paintbrush when they're making a stroke. But a robotic painter or someone that copied that may have just lifted up somewhere, and these AI detectives can actually pick up that there's just a slight lift of the brush, or maybe just looking at the colours slightly different. I think the easiest way would be to do a bit of carbon dating on it, but then you've got to usually destroy a part of it to do that. So we can
have to have carbon in it.
Well, true. Sorry, I think there is another tool, and I misused the term carbon dating.
Oh, sorry, radiometric dating of some sort. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah,
so
I'll back off.
No, you picked me up. No, you picked me up well there. So using some dating technology, but normally you've got to take a bit of that to analyse and usually destroy a bit of it. So if there's a bit you can cut off, no problems at all. But I've just got to cut a hole in your painting to see whether it's genuine or not. Yeah, that's right. We'll do it somewhere you won't notice it
just
that
around
much.
the nostril. It'll look like it's real.
Right, yeah. The painter put a hole there because obviously they need a hole there. So there is some technology like that you could use, but again, you've got to destroy part of it to do that. So having some experts, because art historians are probably not falling out of a tree when you shake them or shake the tree.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they're probably not in great demand. Maybe they're in great demand, but there's not a lot of them around. And for them, for you to put your trust in them to say, I'm about to spend $200 million on this painting, I want you to tell me it's definitely genuine. Oh, look, it looks pretty good. But
yeah, so art historian is a fairly niche sort of a career to have.
Yeah.
But then as an art historian, you're not just a jack of all trades, I would expect. You would be Van Gogh expert, or you would be Matisse expert, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
So trying to find someone, especially if that painting is on the black market, that might be a bit harder to find someone to analyse this painting, because that person, if they're a true art historian, might be maybe
if they're a true art historian, they probably know exactly where that painting is heading for.
Probably.
Yeah.
So anyway, fascinating. I do like the idea. I do wonder whether some people think that if you've got authorised robotic copies out there, does it diminish the value of the originals, or does it enhance it because people are more exposed to that? Me looking on my smart TV and seeing various paintings from various masterpiece painters, does that mean that I go, oh, they're only worth 50 cents now, $50 a year? Or do I go, I appreciate them more when I see the real thing now? I don't know. It's up for debate, I'm sure. But that's where we're headed with art forgery. So that next time you look at that one, maybe you'll have some more information about it.
Excellent. Now, I've got a sneaking feeling that this next story is going to divide opinions. For a long, long time, guide dogs have formed the solution for mobility and independence issues for the blind and vision impaired. most commonly Labradors and Golden Retrievers, they may soon now be replaced by robot dogs, a truly 21st century solution for an age-old problem. But what are the pros and cons, Matt?
Could we get these robot dogs to do some paintings as well? That might be interesting. Just knock up a Renoir on the weekend and then help me out during the week. Although if I was vision impaired, I probably couldn't appreciate that. But yeah, separate issue. So it's expensive to get a guide dog. When you train a guide dog to the point that they can actually literally be trusted with someone's life, which is what they are, it's about $75,000 Australian to get to the point where that guide dog is ready to go. So the demand for guide dogs far outstrips the supply because, again, you can't just manufacture a guide dog. You can't say, we'll ramp up production because it's this nature thing that's involved here with actually breeding and then training a guide dog to the point where you can actually say
and
it's
then
useful.
I wonder what the lifespan is. I mean, so we're talking about, as a puppy it's trained.
Yeah.
But then how old, I haven't done the research, sorry folks, but how old it is when it actually is employed as a guide dog. And then after that you've probably got about, I want to guess, a dozen years maybe.
Before finally it's too old and maybe a bit of arthritis sets in. And yeah, exactly. So all those issues there. And then the other thing that some people that have got guide dogs find is that you've got to feed it, you've got veterinary bills, you've still got to give it a bit of care and love and attention. And it's a living being that you've got to...
It's got poop to clean up.
Well, exactly right. And if you're vision impaired, maybe that to clean up around the house isn't...
Leave it to the Roomba.
That's it. The Roomba will avoid it, hopefully, so you've still got to clean it up. So when you start to talk about robot dogs to help out vision impaired people, the exciting concept there is...
Much less poop.
Much less, absolutely, dramatically less. That's some advertising campaigns, I'm sure, much less poop than a normal guide dog. But when you've got a guide dog that you can ramp up production. So when you can say, we need 1,000 of these, well, let's just increase production and we can produce 1,000 of those. Let's get our factory ramped up or more factories or whatever. So that's the first part of it. But the interesting part is that they did a whole range of interviews with people that have got guide dogs to find out what they wanted in a guide dog. And interestingly enough, they still wanted something that resembled a dog rather than something that might be on 2 legs. And 4 legs makes sense. It's easier for that to be balanced and easier for that to get around. But they still wanted something, but they didn't want it too cute because guide dogs attract attention. So when people talked about it, they said, everyone wants to come over and talk to me about my guide dog or pat my guide dog or be interacting with this lovely guide dog because they are lovely, placid dogs.
Yeah.
But
they've got a job to do, folks.
That's right. The person doesn't really want them being distracted or someone feeding them, for example. So they want them realistic but not too cute. They want them soft but not furry, approachable but not attention-grabbing. So that's an interesting mix there.
Yeah, right.
But the other cool part about it is you can build in a whole range of extra features. So these robotic guide dogs have got GPS, they've got Bluetooth, voice commands, because you can have a two-way conversation with your guide dog. A normal guide dog, you're trying to pick up some signals there, but not really two-way conversation. SOS alerts they want longer battery life, and they want it self-docking. That makes sense. You get back home, you don't have to worry about feeding it or cleaning up anything from the dog because it just goes and plugs itself in, recharges, ready to go the next day.
So I was wondering about the companion factor, and this is why I thought it might be dividing people because there'd be an emotional attachment, I would have thought, that you would build with your Labrador or your Golden Retriever, whereas I wonder if you could manufacture the same thing with a robot dog.
I don't think you do, and I think this is interesting because some people, some guide dog users, see their guide dog as a tool rather than a companion. Some people do absolutely see it as a companion. Yeah. And I think that would come down to the individual's living circumstances. If they live by themselves, then probably they would see that guide dog as a companion. If they live in a multi-person situation, family, whatever it might be, they would probably see it more as a tool. Right, I'm going out, I'll go and grab my helpful tool, my guide dog, and off we go. So I think that would be part of it, and that would be part of the decision-making process for me to get a guide dog. If I was getting a robotic one, do I want companionship? Maybe not the best way to go. Although they're effectively having conversations with large language models now, so you could end up having your guide dog as a bit of a companion, as we've talked about in previous episodes, where people do form a relationship with AI. So
the other thing I hadn't thought of is that this thing could be on 2 legs. You could walk around, not with holding onto a leash, but holding onto a hand.
And I think they've gone the way of dogs at the moment because we haven't got bipedal quite right yet.
Yeah.
So you might be going and holding to a hand and the thing falls over and you go, well, you're not much help to me while you're on the ground, are you? Or they drag you down as you're holding onto their hand. So I think dogs have been better because they are 4 legs, or they've got 4 legs, and so they can actually maneuver around things a bit better, be a bit more stable. And probably people would see it a bit funny if you're walking along holding the hand of a robot. Whereas when you see a lead effectively on a robotic device that looked a bit like a dog, people would understand exactly why that was. So maybe it's from a public understanding as well. Yeah. So if you want to look at some, go and look up, Glasgow's got a robo guide. There's a 6-legged robot called Glide as well that comes out of China, Glide. So there's a couple of ones out there that people are using now.
Sorry, a 6-legged robot that crawls around like some alien and doesn't freak out the public too much.
That doesn't scare the public. It's not overly attention-grabbing apparently. So there are some things that are happening there, but it's just, look, I think overall this might reduce the reliance on human carers, rather than companions, for people that have got vision impairment, and that might be good. It just gives you more flexibility in your living arrangements. But I just think we blend AI, we blend mobility aids, and we blend just the technology that's available now into one device. I think it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. The emergence of drone technology has transformed the modern battlefield. Now, drones are cheap, they're highly mobile, highly manoeuvrable, and deadly accurate. So defence is very, very tricky. Scrambling of signals has been the most effective method to date, but American tech experts may have found a way through even that problem as well.
Well, let's just talk briefly about warfare. Not that I'm a fan of warfare, but from a technological perspective, we know that warfare accelerates technological developments. And there's a whole range of reasons for that, because you are in a life-threatening battle, literally, and so you advancing your side quicker than the opposition is imperative, is incredibly important. So
and a lot of things that have come out of wartime have then been put into civilian life.
And I thought about a few from World War II. I did something with World War II on technology years ago, and so I remembered some of the things out of that. I know we got radar and microwave radar effectively out of World War II. A lot of computers, code breaking, Turing, Enigma, a lot of stuff was happening there around coding and computers. Even penicillin and mass antibiotics came out of World War II, and of course rockets and jet propulsion. So that's just from one that I can think of off the top of my head, where we've got significant developments that happened, and governments are keen to throw a lot of money at things in wartime because obviously they're fighting a battle. So it's almost like we've got an open check for you. Just go and make sure you win this particular technology battle.
Well, GPS was another one, I think, that came out of, but I could be wrong. Sorry, I'm going to back up there.
I don't know GPS was out of wartime. It was out of defence. So GPS first came out of, and I could be wrong there as well, but I thought GPS first in the 70s was basically launched by America to have better accuracy in their defence mechanisms, and then finally it got to the stage where it became in the public. But I don't think it was specifically wartime, maybe Cold War time, if that counts. Yeah, but certainly defence, there's no doubt about it. It was certainly designed for defence initially. So with drones, and we know that drones are being used, and Russia and Ukraine are definitely using drones, and we've talked about some of the little tricks that they've been using. But this is quite fascinating because when you send a drone in, first of all, you haven't got a pilot in the drone, so you go, that's okay, I'm not losing a human, I might lose some technology, but they might knock it out of the sky before it goes and does what I wanted it to do. So I don't really want someone latching onto that signal. So they use basically jamming to try and stop drones being able to go to certain places. And so you've got jamming techniques, you've got spread spectrum to try and lose that. But what they've found in those is that they might be able to lose the exact communication, but they know there is communication. So if I'm trying to detect drones, I don't know that drone is being told to do a certain thing, but I know it's there. So I can latch onto that. And then sometimes I can work out where the signal is coming from to drive that drone, so I can triangulate that back to the headquarters of that particular warfare and say, well, I know that there's the enemy controlling that drone from back there via triangulation of the signal. So that's bad because I'm sitting there in my bunker many kilometres away from my drone thinking I'm nice and safe, and next thing you know, something starts landing beside me that I don't like the look of, and they've worked out where I'm controlling that drone from. So what this particular one does, this concept here, adds 2 protection layers. The first thing they do is the standard strong encryption and spectrum spreading. But then they add this scrambling stage that makes it look like the signal is just background signal. So if I'm out there trying to find where drones might be, there's background noise. We know across the Earth we're being bombarded with electromagnetic frequencies.
Yeah, cosmic radiation.
That's right. So we've got that, and we've got how many radio signals have we got from things like GPS and radio as in radio we listen to.
So the radio static that you hear on, say, AM is a big one.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So there's all that background noise. If I can make my drone sound like the radio signals are just part of that background noise, then people listening for my drone just go, yep, there's normal background noise at the moment. Nothing happening here. Oh my gosh, where's that drone come from?
Right.
So how clever is that?
Yeah.
Now, the way they do that is they basically have, I suppose, a way of scrambling that signal, but also then being able to then de-scramble that signal at the other end. So you're relying on small fragments of that, and you're relying on lower power signal. But then it gets more interesting because normally to stop the detection of drones, they use a 1 watt transmitter, so they're not putting out a really strong signal that people trying to look for it can pick up. They prefer to use 5 watts to get the distance they want, but 5 watts just makes it bleedingly obvious. Okay, there's something really strong over there.
Yeah.
That's a really big red flag that something's happening. With this, they've been able to use 5 watt transmitters and still have it scrambled in such a way that it just looks like stronger background noise for whatever reason, not necessarily this particular noise. Now, I thought, I don't love the idea of warfare. I don't love the idea of us designing technology to kill people. So what's the use of this in civilian life? And I struggled a bit.
Right. Yeah.
I thought maybe in a disaster response. So, for example, if there was an attack on civilians and someone had designed some sort of attack with drones, for example, or with ways to actually combat something, I was struggling a bit.
Well, yeah. Well, there's the nuisance factor, right? So I'm thinking that as drone deliveries become more common, then you just get these people who are at a loose end and they would just like to interfere with that sort of stuff. And so this might be a way of getting through that sort of problem.
Thank you. There's civilian use for it. That's what I was after. So again, what will happen, I'm sure, is that as much as this particular company has shown that we can do it a bit better, then now other companies, other war companies will go, we've got to work out a way to detect these signals. They did a demonstration. There's an event called the TREX event, TREX event at the Pentagon, where different companies show off their different little tools they've got, and an operator basically flew a drone directly over active jamming systems, wasn't detected and wasn't jammed by using this technology. So that's a good way to demonstrate you think this is good. Look at this. Look above you. Where did that come from? No one could pick it up. No one could jam it. But again, now they know that's possible, then they'll start looking the other direction. Yeah,
they can come the other way.
But gee, haven't we come a long way with electromagnetic signals? Haven't we come a long way with radio transmissions? I find that fascinating, just how far we've come. We've talked about things with Wi-Fi. We've developed different versions of Wi-Fi and how we can get faster speeds and stronger signals. And we just seem to keep developing what seems like a fairly complicated concept in the first place, electromagnetic signals, because we can't see it. That makes it complicated for us as humans. We can't see that. But then to keep developing these different techniques with it, it's just fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, Montblanc is a name synonymous with the highest quality pens and stationery since, well, I looked it up, 1906. The name conjures an image of an enormous, dimly lit mahogany desk in a dark office, the sort of desk with a burgundy leather surface and maybe a glass of cognac chilling off to the side. Cool. But in the 21st century, Montblanc have finally succumbed to the pressure and produced an e-ink writing tablet and digital pen. Matt, style has gone all digitised in a big way.
You're using something very similar to that right now as you look through your notes. And so they're actually becoming more and more common. But it's interesting to see a company like Montblanc, who, as you said, started in 1906, and their focus was on high-quality fountain pens. When they started, three Germans started it, and the whole idea was we want to make the best quality fountain pen. And the name didn't start off as Montblanc. It started off as a different name, but they saw the mountain range or the Alps there, and the highest peak in Western Europe is Montblanc, and they went, we want to be at the pinnacle. We want to be at the top of pens. We'll change. I think they started with a fountain pen named Montblanc and then changed the whole company name to that. So here we are over 100 years later. How many people use a fountain pen these days? Probably not that many, but I love when companies do say, you know what, we've got a way to develop with modern technology. So we often talk about the Kodak moment where Kodak didn't do that,
Yep.
but he's a company that's been focused on writing tools, and so they've come up with something which in the essence is probably not that exciting from a technology perspective, but I do like the way that it's been embraced by a non-technology company. So it's basically just a writing tablet. It sounds like a pretty good one. It's got a reasonable sized battery. It's nice. It's encased in aluminium. It's got leather on the sidebar. So it's just a nice...
The pen's probably got a really nice weight about it as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And the colour of the pen matches the colour of the actual unit itself. So it's all very nice. It's expensive. It's almost $1,000
Whoa.
That you'll pay for it, which is dearer than you'd pay for, say, an iPad and a pencil. So you could probably do the same thing with an iPad and a pencil and a lot of other things. This is specifically focused on just being a writing tablet. It'll convert it to text if you want it to. It'll store all that information for you in the cloud. It'll do the things you'd expect out of some sort of digital stationery. But I just love the fact that we've got these high-end companies saying, we've got to be in there in the technology game because we're not going to be around another 100 years' time selling fountain pens.
And if you're going to be sitting at that big mahogany desk with the leather top and the cognac off to the side there, you don't want to be using just an iPad with
Exactly
a pen.
right. You want to be using something that's much more impressive than that. So, and it doesn't matter that it only does standard things. You don't have to tell people that. You go, look at this.
No.
I've got a Montblanc one of those.
As a proud Gen Xer, I can fondly recall frequenting clubs on a Friday or Saturday night as a young adult, and I regularly exploited their entertainment into the wee small hours, shall we say. It was just fairly standard, as I remember, throughout the 90s and the noughties. So, Matt, being someone who is now at the forefront of social trends of the current day, explain for us oldies how clubbing has been tipped on its head in recent years.
Clubbing in cyberspace. Virtual clubbing.
You're into it.
I don't know. I'm in two minds. It doesn't happen so much now, but when we used to go to pubs and clubs when we were younger, I've never smoked in my life. I'm not a big fan of smoking, but you'd come out and you'd feel like you've just smoked a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, it was just standard. Your clothes just reeked.
They stunk. And you didn't have to be in there for very long. And I joke with some of my friends back when I was young and going out to pubs that I wanted to open up a pub that was non-smoking. And they all laughed at me and said you'd go broke in 5 minutes because there were so many people smoking. And I
in
agree
those
with
days
them.
you would have.
Yeah, that's right. But now, of course, you can't smoke in Australia anyway, pubs and clubs. You can't smoke in, and you've got designated smoking areas, and that's great. So you go to the pub now. It's still a bit of a funny smell. Maybe it's so much smoke just in every part of the pub.
It's just the sticky carpet. Yeah?
Maybe the sticky carpet as well. So part of the experience of going to the pub is you used to smell like smoke. You still smell like a pub. You smell like a bit of sweat on the dance floor. You smell like a bit of alcohol that gets spilled on you during the night. Even if you're not drinking yourself, even if you're a designated driver, there'll still be a bit spilled on you somewhere. So the next morning you smell your clothes and you go, whew, that doesn't smell that great. But you remember what a great night you had.
Yeah, it was a great night.
Because of the smell of your clothes. So when someone says, why don't you go and put on a VR headset and come out to the club with us tonight, you get a bit confused. And I started thinking, do you put the VR headset on and then grab something out of the cupboard and just throw it on yourself just to spill a bit on yourself and put a bit of chewing gum on your shoes and then get stuck to the carpet? Or do you appreciate the fact that you're not having those parts of the downside and you're getting the positives? So what are the positives? You get to stand around in a group, and if you have the right club, if you like, if you have the good experience, then we can stand in a group of 10 or 12 of us and we can hear what we're saying. And in the background, we can see someone else we might know, but we can't really hear them. So then we move over towards them and then we lose the volume of you and then pick up the volume of that person. So just like you're at the real nightclub or the real club, as you move around. And they have different things where they might limit the groups to maybe 15 or 20, maybe 30 in one group, or maybe say 50 in one group, but you can move around that group, but then you can see other groups, so you can either sort of jump from group to group.
This sounds like the Star Trek holodeck.
Well, a little bit like that. That's exactly right, where you are moving around and virtually moving around. So it'd be a great way to catch up with people. I've got a great friend of mine who was the groomsman at my wedding, and he lived 1,000 kilometres away, and I caught up with him recently, but I don't get to catch up with him in the physical sense very often, and we rely on phone calls from time to time. But I don't worry about FaceTiming because it seems a bit almost business-like to FaceTime someone. But this sort of thing, let's catch up with a few people and we'll go out to a nightclub in a virtual sense. I can see that working. I can see older people maybe not younger people, older people maybe. In particular, you might be able to hear each other talk, because sometimes when you go to a club now, if I go out somewhere, my kids drag me out somewhere and I go, well, how can you talk to anyone here? You don't come here to talk, Dad. You come here to dance or drink. But it's so loud. It's so loud. I'm sounding like an old man now. So I can actually see that being quite interesting. The other thing I thought of was, if I go back to the old days when you'd go out to a pub, I'd have pub friends. They weren't people that I'd pick up the phone and ring and talk to. I wouldn't say, hey, do you want to catch up for a coffee? They weren't that good a friend, but I quite enjoyed catching up with them when I go to the pub. That's right. And they were quite interesting people to talk to, and you'd catch up with them. But it would be a bit weird if I rang them. Whereas this sort of concept, you could say, hey, let's go to the virtual club, doesn't matter where you are, and I'll catch up with some of those people. And it won't be awkward or weird because it's a group of people, but I enjoy talking to that person. So I'll talk to them in that group scenario and then catch up with them on a more regular basis. So I can see some positives there. The problem is you've got to convince enough of your friends that virtual clubbing is okay, because I don't really want to go there with a bunch of strangers. I want a few people to go together.
Well, it's a bit like a chat room from the 90s or whatever, isn't it?
Probably
so
right.
except instead of typing messages to each other, you're walking up to them virtually and chatting with them. So that could be people from all around the world. It'd be an interesting way of making connections.
It would be, and it's obviously safer because you're not going to be harassed or pushed or shoved.
Till they start asking you for money?
Yeah, that's right. Maybe that happens as well. I've got this great investment scheme. Can you just shoot me a few dollars for that? So it's an interesting concept. I think it really got a few legs during COVID, but now it's still hung around, as many things have hung around after COVID.
And time is the proof, isn't it? If something lasts, then there's got to be something in it.
I think we'll see, so the whole virtual clubbing scenario, I think we'll see it expand a bit with hybrid events where you might have a real and a virtual built in together. So that might be an interesting concept as well. But then imagine that, just global audiences. We are becoming a smaller and smaller planet, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Now, we've already had a story about smart glasses today, but here's another one. The market has now truly taken off in a big way. Meta and Oakley have teamed up to produce something that is a little bit more sporty than the other models, and they've just shunted it up a gear or two. Matt, tell the folks how they can all win with the Vanguard AI specs.
And I don't know whether this is designed for average sports people like you and I, or whether it's designed for...
You call me average sports. I thought I was
slightly better than average sports people like you and I.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, or designed for elite. I was distinguishing that we're not elite athletes. Put it that way. Sorry,
right.
I should have just talked about myself. Not sure if this meant to be for average Joe Blows like me or elite athletes like you in terms of when you might use them. But we've got smart glasses, so we've seen smart glasses. That's kind of gaining some traction, some momentum, but we're now getting high-intensity sports smart glasses that are designed to tap into some of the things that we already use. So, for example, if you're using a Garmin cycling computer or a Garmin watch, then this new Meta and Oakley smart glass set will actually team into those. So you could be riding along on your bike, rather than looking at your computer to see how fast you're going or what your heart rate's doing or whatever, you've got all that information inside your glasses.
Right.
But of course, you can talk to them. They're AI enabled, so you can talk to them. They've got speakers that sit above your ears, so you can hear them, just like smart glasses. And they've got a 12 megapixel centered ultra wide camera, 122 degree field of view with that, 3K UHD video. You can start recording by saying, so I'm riding my mountain bike and I've got this particular jump I'm coming out to that I really want to nail and show everyone how impressive I am as an average sports person. And I go and hit that jump. But before I hit that, I tell my camera in the smart glasses to start recording. I can do that at 30 frames per second, or I can do it at full HD at 60 frames per second. So I can get a bit of slow-mo out of that if you like. So I can do hyperlapse, I can do slow motion, I can do a whole range of things looking at that. But I think where they're headed with this is that, well, in fact, some of the companies have said it, that smart glasses that are designed specifically for sporting activities is the next step in wearable tech. We've talked about a lot of wearable tech already, but smart glasses being the next step in wearable tech and probably integrated with other parts of it. We haven't got them picking up your heart rate yet, but why can't they link to your watch? Of course they can, and pick up your heart rate from there, pick up your blood pressure
We've
from
talked
there.
about how you don't like looking at your watch for when you're running and things like that. You don't want to know your lap times and whatnot.
That's right. When I ride my bike, though, I'm different. But it's normally I'm racing when I normally ride my mountain. I ride apart from racing, but when I'm racing, I do want to know my lap times to see how I'm going and see where I might be able to improve a little bit or catch someone there. So it's interesting.
I was wondering if it could hold my place or tell me my place in the park run.
That'd be good,
Saturday
wouldn't it?
morning.
That'd be good.
Yeah?
Because normally you count the people coming back in the other direction, but you lose count after the first 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 or whatever. So it is quite fascinating, though. You'll get them syncing with apps like Strava. You'll be able to share fitness data via it and be able to see that. So you'll be able to track. There are certain Strava sections that I know where people ride bikes and they're trying to beat each other. You could have that information, live information on your glasses inside. So I don't think we know all the ways we'll use smart glasses yet. One of the things that's certainly important for them is that they can handle being outdoors in rain and sweat, etc. So these ones are IP67. And just briefly, because people get confused about the IP ratings, I'm just going to run through some of the IP ratings. So I do find it fascinating that we've come up with something so complicated for something that should be just, can I use it in the water? It's basically what everyone's
that's it.
IPXY is ingress protection is what IP stands for. So ingress protection, so what it protects against. And the first number is against solids, so like dust and dirt.
Right, okay.
The second number is against liquids, but it gets complicated. So if you look at the first number, 0, no protection. So if someone says, hey, I've got this new device, it's IP0 something, you go...
Yeah, you can only wear it in a clean room.
That's right, you go into a medical lab, that's it. But so, for example, IP1 something, the 1 means that it can handle something greater than 50 millimetres not ingressing. So that means your hand.
Your hand, yeah.
So you kind of go, really? Do I need something at that level? You go through medium objects, small objects as you go 2, 3, 4. What we care about is when it gets to 5 and 6. So basically, or maybe 4. So 4 means it'll keep out things greater than 1 millimetre in size. 5 means that some dust will get in, small particles of dust. But number 6 is what we want, dust tight. So IP6, we want dust tight. And then the second number is liquids. So for example, IP0, no protection. So if it sniffs water, if it thinks there's water somewhere nearby, it's gone.
It freaks out.
So X1, 1 would mean dripping water falling onto it. Something like IPX2 would mean dripping water tilted at 15 degrees. It could handle, goes through there. What we really want though is when we get to IPX7. So 7 means immersion up to 1 metre for 30 minutes. That's not too bad.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
IPX8.
It's a lot of holding your breath.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
IPX8, continuous immersion deeper than 1 metre. But this is where it gets complicated because each manufacturer then defines their own IPX8. So it needs to be continuous immersion.
We need a standard unit.
We need a standard unit for that next one, deeper than 1 metre. So if I put out something that can be underwater for 30 minutes at 1 metre, then I can put the 8 tag on it. But someone else might have something that can go to 3 metres for an hour, and that still only gets an 8. I think we need something better for that one.
Yeah.
So when you see IP68, which is common, dust protective, great, and water protection for at least 1 metre or at least 1 metre depth for at least 30 minutes, but it could be much more than that. So each one will have their own IP68. So back to these glasses.
Right. Okay.
They're IP67, which means basically dust tight, yep, fantastic, and water 30 minutes up to 1 metre, which for me, what I'm after is at least IP67 for something I'm exercising with, because I'm probably, unless I'm
If you've ridden your bike into the water and you're like 1 metre deep,
then I'm in trouble. That's right. But at least that means I can handle being out in the rain.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be concerned about the rain or my sweat, so that's fine.
That's good.
Yeah, there you go. So there's our standard SI units, which are proper units, not some other thing about...
Made up.
Yeah.
Gone are the days when you needed big, heavy cameras to take good film and video. Mobile phones are every bit as good these days, but perhaps none are better than the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Everything a creator needs, all conveniently on the phone. Matt, tell us about this iPhone 17 Pro
Well,
Max.
I was actually quite interested when I watched the launch, got up early in the morning to watch the launch, and they talked about the 17 Pro Max with 2 terabytes of storage. And I went, 2 terabytes? Oh, really? That's right. That's a lot of storage in a phone for your little videos and your photos, etc. Now, what I want to talk about more today, more than the iPhone 17 Pro Max, is what they plugged when they did the launch, teaming it up with. So there's a company in Melbourne, Black Magic Design, and they've teamed up with Apple. I'm sure they've been doing lots of product research in highly confidential circumstances. I'm sure there were NDAs as tight as you like that were signed by this company, because when they launched, they put this little black box on the screen and showed that this is how you'd use the iPhone 17 Pro Max with its 2 terabytes of data. And this device is basically a dock. And this dock turns your humble iPhone into a modern, sophisticated camera studio.
Right.
So you plug in your little dock and it gives you some things that you don't have on the phone. So for example, a 3.5mm audio jack, so you can plug in some other devices that you might want as part of your filming process. HDMI out, so you can have some screens to watch. So your director sitting in the chair can keep an eye on what's happening with the filming as it's going on. Time code and gen lock, so you can actually synchronize multiple cameras. And I do that. I use an app to do that when I do multiple cameras, a little app that's like a clapper board.
Yeah, okay.
But then I've still got to manually go and get the clapper board lined up with the cameras that I might use. But using things like gen lock and time code, it means that all of those cameras that I use can be staying perfectly in sync. And I have to have that little manual process that I use. It's got some extra USB-C ports for SSDs, for some extra storage, but why would you need it when you've got 2 terabytes? The bottom line here is that what they're trying to do is say, forget about going and buying expensive cinema-ready cameras. You've got an iPhone 17. You can use that for your professional productions. And we've seen companies who say, I've shot this whole film on something like an iPhone 17, a smartphone. Typically they'll say, they don't normally say the brand unless they're being sponsored, but essentially you're getting, and some are small independent filmmakers, but you're getting big studios sometimes who are using smartphones for their whole production. But if you're doing that, you want to be able to have some other smarts behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And that's where this Blackmagic Design have come up with this little ProDock to be able to do that. The other thing that's important, of course, is that they use ProRes RAW video, which is their little trademark name of saying basically uncompressed video. Because if I'm a professional cinematographer, I don't want that rubbishy compressed video, which is still pretty good to my eye.
Yeah.
But I want the uncompressed video, which uncompressed video takes up a lot more storage space as well.
Okay.
So even though 2 terabytes seems like way over the top, and how would I ever use that? And keep in mind, you pay an extra $800 to go from 1 terabyte to 2 terabytes. And I'm sure it didn't cost them $800 to put that extra terabyte in. But this is the price you're paying for that sort of level. So even though it seems like it's over the top, if you add that dock, and that dock only costs about $500, you're turning your phone into something that's pretty impressive for an amateur cinematographer.
Yeah.
So quite incredible.
Look, just holding your phone there, it's less impressive than having a big camera where you're playing cameraman. But, yeah, if it's doing the same job.
Well, one of the things that's interesting is that they did talk about the fact that some creators like to be in scenarios where they don't want the great big camera rig.
Avoid that.
That's right. So, for example, if you're filming something in the public, maybe part of a protest, maybe part of something where you don't want to look like, you don't want people distracted.
You would be discreet.
Yeah, and you don't want people waving. There's nothing worse. I'm sure if I'm a news cameraman, I'm just trying to grab some footage of something that's happening, the last thing I want is people smiling and waving, hi.
Well, yeah, people just behave differently. Even if they're not smiling and waving, they're just behaving differently when they know there's a camera there.
That's right. And I think the thing is now, if you just saw a smartphone, you don't go, oh, I better wave to the smartphone because there's so many out there. So you don't think of it. Even some of the rigs, because you still want something that stops the phone from bouncing around, so you still want it in some sort of gimbal. But even the gimbal I use, for example, it just looks like a little stick that I can hold my phone on, so it looks a bit more convenient, but it's a little gimbal. So you don't need the big camera rigging gimbals, which might draw attention to yourself, but you might just use a phone on a nice little simple gimbal, and suddenly you've got cinema-grade photography or videography, and you're not being really obvious about it. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm getting someone to film my wedding, I want them to turn up with a big bit of gear that looks really impressive. Oh, you've got a smartphone. I could have done that. So you probably want it in some circumstances to look big and impressive, but other times maybe not so much. But the bottom line is a lot of videographers that do this for a profession tell me that in outdoor light, the footage quality of a smartphone, a modern smartphone, is undetectable from the naked eye from professional grade cinema photography.
There you go.
But in low light, that's where sometimes the bigger lens of those cameras is a bit more impressive. Yeah. So anyway, Blackmagic Design, it's a Melbourne-based company. I love the fact that we've got an Australian-based company involved in an Apple launch. But if you are into that sort of thing, then go and check it out because it's pretty impressive what you can do with it.
Fantastic. And that's all we have for you today, folks. We've got seconds before they start playing the national anthem and throw up the test pattern like they did in the old days. Thanks for another cracking Tech Talk, Matt.
The test pattern. I forgot about the old test pattern. You knew it was the late night when you came home smelling like smoke and alcohol.
Yeah, you turn on the television and all there was boom.
That's right.
And this
the test pattern or the TV people that it used to be. So I'm off to use a bit more of my freelance marketplace. So now I've remembered it again, haven't used it for a while. I go, what else can I do with this? This is cool. I'll go and find some other jobs that I need done that I'll go and get someone to do for me. So, yeah, go and check out some of those.
Very cool. And thank you one and all for tuning into Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. It's a Ground Roots podcast with all the glimmer and glitz of, without all the glimmer and glitz of all the other podcasts, so you know it's good for you. I'm your host, James Eddy, wishing you all the best for the week ahead. We hope that you'll join us again in one more week's time for our next episode of all that's latest in the news of technology and science. Until then, take care, and we'll see you when we see you.